March 15th, 2023, 9:47 p.m. Sarah Chun typed 5 words that would seal her fate. "I know who you are." She hit send. The man on the other end read it, and in that moment, he made a decision. Sarah would never see another sunrise. This is the story of how a $200 online purchase turned into a calculated murder and a digital trail that a killer thought he'd erase forever. What you're about to hear will make you question everyone you meet online. Stay until the end, because the evidence investigators found will leave you speechless. Over the next 40 minutes, you'll discover how Marcus Webb built an intricate web of lies spanning 3 states and dozens of victims. You'll see the chilling final text conversation between Sarah and her killer. You'll hear the 911 call that started it all. And you'll learn about the one digital mistake he made, a mistake so small, so seemingly insignificant, that ultimately brought down his entire operation and exposed him as a murderer. This isn't just a story about fraud. It's a story about what happens when desperation meets discovery. Sarah Chun was 28 years old, a graphic designer living in Portland, Oregon. If you scrolled through her Instagram, you'd see a woman who loved hiking, had an obsession with trying new coffee shops, and posted way too many photos of her rescue cat, Machi. Her best friend, Jennifer Martinez, described her as the person who'd give you the shirt off her back, even if it was her favorite one. Sarah was the friend who remembered birthdays, who showed up when you needed help moving, who sent you memes at 2 a.m. because she knew you were going through a breakup. But here's what made Sarah different. She wasn't naive. She wasn't reckless. She was actually incredibly careful online. She used strong passwords. She fact-checked everything. Her friends joked that she was paranoid about internet safety. And yet, on February 28th, 2023, Sarah made one decision that would unravel everything. Early 2023 was a rough time for Sarah. Her design freelance work had slowed down. Rent in Portland wasn't getting any cheaper. She'd been saving for months to upgrade her laptop, the one she used for all her work, but it finally died on her. She needed a new one fast. But with only $800 in her checking account and rent due in 2 weeks, buying a brand new MacBook Pro wasn't an option. So she did what millions of us do every single day. She opened Facebook Marketplace. She searched for MacBook Pro, scrolled through dozens of listings. Most were too expensive. Some looked sketchy. And then on March 1st, she found it. A 2021 MacBook Pro, barely used, listed for just $850. The photos looked legitimate. The description was detailed. And the seller had a profile with photos, friends, and posts going back years. His name was David Miller. At least, that's what his profile said. Sarah sent a message. "Is this still available?" Within 5 minutes, David Miller responded. What Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that David Miller didn't exist. And the man behind that profile had just found his next target. But before we get to how this all went wrong, you need to understand who Sarah was really talking to. Because Marcus Webb wasn't just a scammer. He was something far worse. Marcus Webb, 34 years old, a former IT specialist from Sacramento who'd lost his job in 2021. But Marcus didn't go looking for new work. Instead, he discovered something much more profitable: online fraud. By 2023, Marcus had created over 50 fake Facebook profiles, fake Instagram accounts, fake LinkedIn pages, each one carefully constructed with stolen photos, fake friends, manufactured histories. He'd spent 2 years perfecting his system. Here's how it worked. Marcus would steal photos from real people's social media, usually from private accounts or people overseas who'd never know their photos were being used. He'd create an entire fake identity, a job, a family, a life. Then he'd list high-value items for sale: MacBooks, iPhones, cameras, gaming systems. Always slightly below market value. Just cheap enough to be tempting. Just expensive enough to seem legitimate. When someone reached out, Marcus would be friendly, responsive, professional. He'd answer questions. He'd send additional photos. He'd even offer to meet in person at first. But here's where the scam really happened. After building trust, Marcus would say he'd prefer to use a secure payment service for protection. He'd send a link. It looked like a legitimate escrow website. Professional design. Security badges. The works. But it was fake. Marcus had built it himself. When victims entered their payment information, Marcus got everything. Credit card numbers, bank account details, everything. In 2 years, Marcus had stolen over $300,000 from 127 victims across 15 states. But he'd never killed anyone. Not yet. Let's go back to March 1st. Sarah and David Miller began messaging. David, hi. Yes, it's still available. Are you local to Portland? Sarah, yes. Can I ask why you're selling it? David, got it for work, but they ended up providing me with a company laptop. It's just been sitting in my closet. A reasonable explanation. Sarah checked his profile again. Photos of David at what looked like tech conferences. Posts about coding and web design. It all checked out. They messaged back and forth for 3 days. David sent more photos. Showed her the serial number. Answered every question. Then came the red flags. Sarah missed red flag number 1. David insisted on using a payment platform Sarah had never heard of. Escrow Safe Pro. He said it was more secure than PayPal. Red flag number 2. When Sarah suggested meeting in person at a police station parking lot, David said he was actually in Seattle for work, but would ship the laptop overnight once payment cleared. Red flag number 3. The website David sent her had a URL that was slightly off. Not escrowsafe.com, but escrow-safe-pro.com. But Sarah was under pressure. Her freelance deadline was approaching. She needed that laptop, and David seemed so normal. On March 5th, Sarah entered her credit card information into Marcus Webb's fake website. She paid $850, and then she waited. March 8th, 3 days later. No laptop. Sarah messaged David. No response. She messaged again. Nothing. She called her credit card company. They confirmed the charge went through. But when they investigated, they discovered the payment had been routed through 3 different offshore accounts before disappearing. Sarah had been scammed. But unlike Marcus's other victims, Sarah didn't just file a police report and move on. Sarah got angry. Sarah was a graphic designer, remember? She knew Photoshop. She knew image forensics. She knew how to reverse image search. And so she started digging. She took every photo David Miller had sent her and ran them through Google's reverse image search. March 10th, 11:47 p.m. She found something. One of the photos, a selfie David had sent to prove he was real, appeared on another website. A LinkedIn profile. But it wasn't David Miller's profile. It was a software engineer named Thomas Park. From Seoul, South Korea. The photo had been stolen. Sarah's hands were shaking as she kept searching. She found another photo, and another. Different people, different countries, all stolen. David Miller wasn't real, but someone had created him. Someone had stolen her money. Someone had built that fake website. And Sarah was going to find out who. What Sarah didn't realize, what none of Marcus's previous victims had realized, was that she was getting close to something Marcus had spent 2 years protecting. His real identity. Next is what signed her death warrant. But first, you need to understand just how far Marcus had gone to hide his tracks. For 5 days straight, Sarah barely slept. She wasn't just angry. She was obsessed. She joined Facebook groups for scam victims. She learned about website registration databases. She taught herself basic coding to understand how the fake escrow site worked. And on March 13th, Sarah found the crack in Marcus's armor. The fake website, escrow-safe-pro.com, required a hosting service. Every website does. And hosting services keep registration records. Sarah found a website called WHOIS that shows who owns domain names. Most scammers hide this information behind privacy services. Marcus had too. But Sarah noticed something in the website's source code. A small JavaScript file that had been hosted on a different server. A server Marcus had forgotten to anonymize. That server was registered to an email address, m.web.tech@gmail.com. It took Sarah 12 seconds to Google that email. And there he was, Marcus Webb, Sacramento, California. Former IT specialist at a tech company called DataCore Solutions. His LinkedIn profile showed he'd been fired in 2021 for violating company data policies. Sarah cross-referenced Marcus's Facebook profile with his LinkedIn. Same person, but Marcus's real Facebook was locked down, completely private. But Sarah wasn't done. She found Marcus's old Twitter account. He'd abandoned it in 2020, but it was still public. And in those old tweets, she found photos. Photos taken at his apartment complex. Photos with geotagged locations. On March 14th, Sarah had it all. Marcus's real name, his address, his employment history, his pattern of fake profiles. She'd found 6 others using reverse image searches. She had everything she needed to destroy him. March 15th, 9:47 p.m. Sarah created a new Facebook account. She found one of Marcus's active fake profiles, Brian Anderson, who was currently listing an iPhone for sale. She sent a message from her new account, but she didn't ask about the iPhone. "Sarah, I know who you are." For 3 minutes, no response. Marcus, Brian Anderson, was online. The little green dot showed he was active. Then, "I think you have the wrong person. Sarah, your name is Marcus Webb. You live at Redacted in Sacramento. You stole $850 from me on March 5th. You have at least 50 fake profiles. I have screenshots of everything. Every fake profile. Every victim I could find. I have your real address, your real name, your real face." 5 minutes passed. Then, "What do you want?" "Sarah, I want my money back, and I want you to turn yourself in. I'm filing a police report tomorrow morning. I'm posting everything I found in scam victim groups. I'm making sure everyone knows exactly who you are." What happened next? Investigators would later piece together from Marcus's phone records. At 9:53 p.m., Marcus Webb Googled, "How long is prison sentence for wire fraud multiple states?" At 9:56 p.m., he Googled, "Can you go to jail for identity theft?" At 10:02 p.m., he Googled something else. Something that would change everything. How to find someone's address from Facebook profile. Marcus had spent 2 years building a system that had made him $300,000. And now one woman, one angry, smart, determined woman, was about to destroy it all. He had 2 choices: go to prison or make sure Sarah Chun never filed that police report. At 10:15 p.m., Marcus sent Sarah a message. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'll pay you back. Can we meet tomorrow? I'll give you cash. Please don't go to the police. I'll make this right." Sarah hesitated. She could see Marcus was typing more. "I know you don't trust me, but I promise. I'll meet you anywhere public." Her best friend, Jennifer, would later tell police, "Sarah texted me that night. She said someone had offered to pay her back in person. I told her not to go. I told her it sounded dangerous. She said she'd meet him somewhere public and that she'd already been scammed once. She wasn't going to let it happen again." At 10:47 p.m., Sarah responded. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the Starbucks on Morrison Street, downtown Portland. Lots of people. You bring $850 cash. I bring my phone with the police non-emergency number already dialed. If anything seems wrong, I press call." Marcus, "Deal. I'll be there. And I really am sorry." Sarah went to bed that night feeling vindicated, empowered, like she'd won. But Marcus Webb wasn't planning to give her any money. He was planning something else entirely. Starbucks, police station parking lot, wherever you feel safe. "Please, let me make this right." Sarah stared at the message. Before I show you what Marcus did next, you need to see the evidence that would later prove premeditation. Because what investigators found on his computer would prove this wasn't a panic decision. This was calculated. This was planned. And it started the moment Sarah said those 5 words. March 15th, 10:52 p.m. Sacramento, California. Marcus Webb didn't sleep that night. According to his cell phone records, which police would later obtain, Marcus made several stops between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. 11:17 p.m., Marcus drove to a 24-hour Walmart. Security footage showed him purchasing zip ties, bleach, industrial garbage bags, a tarp, and duct tape. He paid cash. 12:43 a.m., he stopped at a gas station, filled up his tank, bought a prepaid phone. Again cash. 1:28 a.m., he returned home. His apartment complex security cameras show him carrying several bags inside. But here's what's crucial, and what prosecutors would later use to prove premeditation. At 2:15 a.m., Marcus opened his laptop. His browsing history recovered from his hard drive, shows exactly what he researched. Marcus wasn't researching out of curiosity. He was planning. At 3:47 a.m., Marcus sent Sarah another message from his Brian Anderson account. "Hey, I just realized I have to drive up to Portland for a work thing anyway tomorrow morning. I'll already be in town. Would you want to meet earlier? Like noon? That way you get your money sooner." Sarah, awake and anxious, responded within minutes. "Fine. Noon. Same place." "Marcus, actually, that Starbucks gets really crowded at lunch. What about the one on 23rd Avenue? Less people, but still public." This was the moment. The pivot point. Sarah could have said no. Could have insisted on the original location. Could have told a friend where she was going. Instead, at 4:02 a.m., she wrote, "Okay. Noon. 23rd Avenue Starbucks. Don't be late. Marcus, I won't. See you then." At 4:15 a.m., Marcus Webb locked his apartment, got in his 2019 Honda Civic, and began the 10-hour drive to Portland. He had 8 hours to perfect his plan. Interstate 5 North, the most direct route from Sacramento to Portland. 586 miles. Marcus's cell phone pinged off towers the entire way. Police would later trace his exact route. But here's what makes this even more chilling. At 8:23 a.m., while Marcus was somewhere near Redding, California, he pulled over at a rest stop. Security cameras captured him in the parking lot on his phone. At that exact moment, he sent Sarah another message. "Hey, running a bit early. Might get there by 11:30. Want to just meet then?" Sarah, "Sure." Marcus, "Cool. Hey, actually, I know this sounds weird, but is there any chance we could meet somewhere more private? I'm really embarrassed about this whole thing, and there are people from my work who live in Portland. I don't want them to see me having this conversation. Is there a park or something?" This was it. This was the ask. And Sarah, smart, cautious Sarah, made a decision that her friends and family would agonize over for years. "Sarah, there's a hiking trail near Forest Park. Wildwood Trail parking lot. It's usually empty on weekday mornings, but it's public enough. That work?" Marcus, "Perfect. See you at 11:30. At 9:15 a.m., Marcus Googled Wildwood Trail parking lot Portland. At 9:18 a.m., he Googled cell phone reception Forest Park, Portland. At 11:02 a.m., Marcus Webb arrived in Portland. He had 28 minutes before Sarah showed up. March 16, 2023, 11:30 a.m. Wildwood Trail parking lot. Sarah pulled into the lot at exactly 11:32 a.m. Her phone's GPS data would later confirm this. Marcus's car was already there. A gray Honda Civic, backed into a parking space near the trail entrance. Sarah's final text message, sent at 11:33 a.m. to her friend Jennifer, read, "Here. Car is here. If you don't hear from me in 30-minute call police." Jennifer responded immediately. "Sarah, don't go. This is a bad idea." That message was delivered. The little red receipt showed Sarah saw it at 11:34 a.m. What happened in those 17 minutes, investigators would have to piece together from evidence. Because there were no witnesses, no security cameras, no audio recording. But the evidence would tell the story. At 11:52 a.m., both Marcus's phone and Sarah's phone began moving together, away from the parking lot, deeper into Forest Park. At 12:41 p.m., Marcus's phone appeared back at the parking lot. Alone. Sarah's phone never moved again. At 12:43 p.m., a hiker named Robert Chun, no relation to Sarah, entered the parking lot. He noticed a gray Honda Civic pulling out quickly, tires screeching. He thought it was odd. He didn't think much more about it. He had no idea he'd just seen Marcus Webb leaving a crime scene. She never responded. At 11:35 a.m., Sarah's phone stopped moving. GPS shows it remained in that parking lot for exactly 17 minutes. He thought it was odd. He didn't think much more about it. He had no idea he'd just seen Marcus Webb leaving a crime scene. What happened in those 17 minutes would remain a mystery for 3 more days. But when investigators finally pieced it together, what they found was worse than anyone imagined. Because Marcus hadn't just killed Sarah. He tried to erase her completely. March 16th, 12:15 p.m. Jennifer Martinez was sitting at lunch when she checked her phone. Sarah still hadn't responded to her warning text from 40 minutes ago. She called Sarah. Straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. At 12:47 p.m., exactly when Marcus Webb's car was exiting Forest Park, Jennifer called the Portland Police Department. I think something happened to my friend. She wanted to meet someone from the internet to get money back from a scam. She told me if I didn't hear from her in 30 minutes to call you. It's been over an hour. The dispatcher took down the information. Jennifer gave them everything. Sarah's name, her car description, the location, the reason for the meeting, everything she knew about Brian Anderson. At 1:23 p.m., Portland police officers arrived at the Wildwood Trail parking lot. Sarah's car was still there, a 2015 Toyota Corolla. Locked. Empty. They looked inside. Her purse was on the passenger seat. Her laptop bag in the back. Her keys were missing. One officer walked toward the trailhead, calling Sarah's name. No response. At 1:45 p.m., Sarah Chun was officially reported as a missing person. But she wasn't missing. She was already dead. For 3 days, search and rescue teams combed Forest Park. Over 5,000 acres of dense forest. Volunteers posted flyers. News stations ran her photo. Sarah's family flew in from California, desperate for answers. Jennifer gave police everything she knew. The messages, the fake profile, the name Brian Anderson. Facebook immediately provided the account information, but was a dead end. The profile had been created with a fake email from a library computer in Sacramento 2 years prior. The IP addresses changed constantly. Marcus had used VPNs. But then investigators got smart. They requested Facebook's data for the conversation between Sarah and Brian Anderson. Not just the messages, the metadata, the timestamps, the IP addresses, the device information. And they found something Marcus had forgotten about. On March 15th, at 10:15 p.m., when Marcus sent that first message offering to pay Sarah back, he'd forgotten to turn on his VPN. For exactly 4 minutes, his real IP address was exposed. And that IP address was registered to Marcus Webb. Sacramento, California. March 18th, 2:34 a.m. Sacramento police, assisted by Portland detectives, knocked on Marcus Webb's apartment door. No answer. They obtained a warrant. Breached the door. The apartment was empty. Marcus was gone, but he'd left everything behind. His computer, his fake IDs, his other phones. In his haste to disappear, Marcus had made his second critical mistake. He'd left the evidence. March 19th, 8:47 a.m. A search and rescue dog named Atlas was working a grid pattern in a remote section of Forest Park, nearly 2 miles from the parking lot. Atlas stopped, sat down, the signal for a find. His handler approached, saw disturbed earth, fresh dirt, branches arranged unnaturally. At 9:15 a.m., investigators confirmed what everyone had feared. They'd found Sarah Chun. I won't go into graphic detail out of respect for Sarah and her family. But the medical examiner's report would later reveal what happened. Sarah had been strangled, manually. The bruising pattern suggested the killer had used his hands, not a ligature. It would have taken several minutes. It would have been personal, intimate, terrifying. The time of death was estimated between 11:40 a.m. and noon on March 16th. But here's what proved this was premeditated murder, not a panic crime of passion. Marcus had brought a murder kit. He'd planned to dispose of her body somewhere else, somewhere it might never be found. But something had gone wrong. Maybe Sarah fought harder than he expected. Maybe he panicked. Maybe another hiker came too close. Whatever the reason, Marcus had buried her quickly, hastily, in a shallow grave. And then he'd run. But he didn't run far enough. The manhunt for Marcus Webb was about to become one of the most intense digital investigations in Oregon history. Because Marcus had forgotten one crucial thing. The one mistake that would lead police right to him. And it all came down to something he'd posted on social media 3 years earlier. March 19th, 11 a.m. Portland police held a press conference. They released Marcus Webb's photo. They announced he was wanted for the murder of Sarah Chun. They called him armed and dangerous. Within hours, the story went national. But Marcus had vanished. His car, that gray Honda Civic, hadn't been seen since he left Portland. His credit cards hadn't been used. His cell phone was off. The FBI joined the investigation. This was now interstate flight to avoid prosecution, federal jurisdiction, and this is where the investigation became a masterclass in digital forensics. Remember I mentioned Marcus's mistake? Here's what investigators found. They seized Marcus's laptop from his apartment. His browser history had been deleted, but digital forensics experts recovered it. All of it. They found his research from a night before the murder. The zip ties, the disposal sites, the DNA searches. But they found something else. Marcus had made dozens of fake Facebook profiles. But to make them seem real, he'd added fake friends. Hundreds of them. And to manage all these accounts, he'd used a social media automation tool, a software program that let him control multiple profiles from one dashboard. That software required a master email to set up. An email Marcus had created in 2020, before he knew he'd need to hide his identity. That email was linked to his Apple ID, his real Apple ID. And Apple has a service called Find My iPhone. March 20th, 4:23 a.m. FBI digital forensics agents accessed Marcus's Apple account with a federal warrant. Find My iPhone showed his phone had been turned on twice since the murder. First ping, March 16th, 8:47 p.m. A motel outside Eugene, Oregon, 2 hours south of Portland. Second ping, March 19th, 11:52 p.m. A Motel 6 in Redding, California. He was heading back toward Sacramento. But that second ping had only lasted for 7 minutes. Just long enough for Marcus to turn on his phone, realize his mistake, and turn it off again. But 7 minutes was enough. March 20th, 6:15 a.m. FBI agents and local police surrounded the Motel 6 in Redding. Room 147. They knocked. Marcus Webb, FBI. Open the door. Silence. They knocked again. Then from inside, I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't mean to. The door opened. Marcus Webb, unshaven, exhausted, terrified, stood in the doorway with his hands up. He was arrested without incident. The evidence against Marcus Webb was overwhelming. From his car, Sarah's blood in the trunk. He'd attempted to clean it, but luminol revealed traces, fibers from the tarp found with Sarah's body soil samples matching the burial site. From his apartment, the Walmart receipt for the murder kit, 47 fake Facebook profiles managed from his computer saved messages from 127 scam victims, $287,000 in various cryptocurrency accounts. From his phone records, GPS data proving he drove to Portland the morning of the murder, GPS data proving he was at the burial site, browser history showing premeditation. But here's what sealed it. In Marcus's car, investigators found Sarah's phone. Not in pieces, not destroyed, just turned off and hidden under the passenger seat. Why would a tech-savvy scammer keep the victim's phone? Why not destroy it? Investigators believe Marcus panicked. He turned it off to stop the GPS tracking, but forgot about it in his rush to flee. That phone contained everything. The entire conversation, the threats, the meeting arrangement, all of it. Marcus Webb had murdered Sarah Chun to protect his identity. And in doing so, he'd left behind a digital trail that exposed him completely. Marcus's trial would reveal even more disturbing details, including a confession that would haunt Sarah's family forever. Because what Marcus told investigators about why he killed her would prove this wasn't about money at all. October 2023, 7 months after Sarah's murder. Multnomah County Courthouse, Portland, Oregon. Marcus Webb pleaded not guilty. His defense attorney argued that this was manslaughter, not premeditated murder. That Marcus had panicked when confronted. That he never intended to kill anyone. The prosecution presented the Walmart receipt, the browser history, the GPS data, the tarp, the zip ties. They called 23 of Marcus's scam victims to testify. Each one described the same pattern. The fake profiles, the fake websites, the stolen money. They established motive. Marcus was facing decades in federal prison for wire fraud and identity theft. Sarah Chun was the only victim who discovered his real identity. The only one who could connect all 50-plus fake profiles to one person. The only one who could destroy him. But the most damaging testimony came from Marcus himself. Against his attorney's advice, Marcus took the stand. And he confessed. I didn't want to kill her, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. I just wanted her to stop. I wanted her to delete everything, to leave me alone. The prosecutor stood up. Mr. Webb, you drove 10 hours with zip ties, duct tape, bleach, and garbage bags. You researched disposal sites and how to clean DNA. How is that not premeditation? Marcus looked down. Silence filled the courtroom. I panicked, he finally said. When she sent that message, I know who you are. I knew everything was over. 2 years of work. $300,000. My freedom. Everything. I couldn't go to prison. I couldn't. So you decided to kill her instead? I decided to make her understand. To scare her. To make her delete it all. But when I got there, when we met in that parking lot, she had screenshots. Printed documents. She'd organized everything. She told me she'd already sent copies to a friend. That if anything happened to her, it would all go to the police anyway. Marcus's voice cracked. She'd beaten me. Even if I did what I did, I'd already lost. And I still killed her. Because I was angry. Because she destroyed my life. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. The prosecutor's voice was cold. Sarah Chun destroyed your life? Mr. Webb, Sarah Chun was trying to recover $850 you stole from her. She was trying to stop you from victimizing anyone else. The only person who destroyed your life is you. Marcus had no response. His confession was complete, and it was damning. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. But before the verdict, the court heard from the people whose lives Marcus Webb had shattered. Sarah's mother, Linda Chun, approached the podium. Her hands shook as she held her prepared statement. My daughter was 28 years old, she began, her voice breaking. She had her whole life ahead of her. She wanted to start her own design agency. She talked about adopting another cat. She called me every Sunday morning without fail. The last time we spoke, she told me about a laptop she was buying. She was excited. She said it would help her land bigger clients. That was our last conversation. About a laptop. Marcus Webb didn't just kill my daughter. He killed every Sunday morning phone call I'll never receive. Every birthday I'll never celebrate with her. Every grandchild I'll never have. He killed my future along with hers. And for what? Because she dared to stand up to him? Because she refused to be another silent victim? Linda looked directly at Marcus. My daughter was braver than you'll ever be. She fought for what was right, and you killed her for it. I hope you spend every day of the rest of your life thinking about what you took from this world. Sarah's father, David Chun, spoke next. Then Jennifer, her best friend, who described the text message she received. The one asking her to call police if she didn't hear back in 30 minutes. I got that text at 11:33 a.m., Jennifer said through tears. I responded immediately, begging her not to go. She read my message. And then, nothing. For the rest of my life, I'll wonder if I'd called her instead of texting, if I'd driven there myself, if I'd done something different, would she still be alive? 23 of Marcus's scam victims also submitted statements. Each one described the betrayal, the violation, the financial devastation. But they were alive. Sarah Chun was not. October 27, 2023. 2:47 p.m. The jury retired to deliberate. The courtroom emptied. Sarah's family waited in the hallway. Marcus was taken back to holding. 6 hours passed. At 8:52 p.m., the bailiff received word. The jury had reached a verdict. The courtroom filled again. Every seat taken. News cameras lined the back wall. Marcus was brought back in, his face pale, hands trembling. The jury filed in. None of them looked at Marcus. In criminal trials, that's never a good sign for the defendant. Judge Morrison looked at the jury foreman. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The foreman handed a sealed envelope to the bailiff, who walked it to the judge. Judge Morrison opened it. Read silently. Her expression gave nothing away. She handed it back to the foreman. Please read the verdict. The courtroom held its breath. In the case of the state of Oregon versus Marcus Webb, on the charge of murder in the first degree, we the jury find the defendant guilty. On the charge of aggravated identity theft, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of interstate flight to avoid prosecution, we find the defendant guilty. Marcus Webb sat motionless. His attorney put a hand on his shoulder. Marcus didn't react. Behind him, Sarah's family wept. Not from joy. There is no joy in a murder trial, but from relief. Relief that Sarah's killer would be held accountable. Relief that justice, in some small measure, had been served. Judge Morrison's gavel struck 3 times. Mr. Webb, you will be remanded to custody pending sentencing. This court is adjourned November 10th, 2023. Sentencing day. Judge Morrison looked at Marcus Webb with an expression of barely contained disgust. Mr. Webb, in my 23 years on the bench, I have never seen such a callous, premeditated, and utterly senseless murder. You didn't kill Sarah Chun in a moment of passion. You didn't kill her in self-defense. You killed her because she inconvenienced you, because she dared to hold you accountable for your crimes. You spent 2 years building an empire of lies. You stole from 127 people. You destroyed trust. You exploited vulnerability. And when one brave woman stood up to you, you murdered her. Sarah Chun was 28 years old. She had dreams. She had family. She had friends who loved her. She had a cat named Machi who, by the way, waited by the door for 3 weeks after she disappeared, waiting for her to come home. You took all of that away for $850. For the crime of murder in the first degree, I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For wire fraud and identity theft, I sentence you to an additional 25 years in federal prison, to be served consecutively. For interstate flight, an additional 5 years consecutive. Marcus Webb, you will spend the rest of your natural life in prison. You will never breathe free air again. You will never see another sunrise without bars on your windows. You will die in prison, and that still won't be justice for what you took from Sarah Chun and her family. But it's the best this court can do. 2 bailiffs approached Marcus. They placed handcuffs on his wrists. Marcus stood, his legs shaky. As he was led toward the door, he turned back one last time. He looked at Sarah's family. Linda Chun stared back at him, her face a mask of grief and rage. Marcus opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it. There was nothing he could say, no apology that would matter, no explanation that would suffice. He turned away and walked through the door. Marcus Webb was 34 years old. He would be 59 before his first parole eligibility, which would be automatically denied because he'd been sentenced to life without parole. He would die in prison. In the months after Marcus Webb's sentencing, Sarah's family tried to rebuild their lives. But there is no rebuilding after murder. There's only learning to live with a hole that can never be filled. Linda Chun created a scholarship fund in Sarah's name for aspiring graphic designers. David Chun became an advocate for online marketplace safety regulations. Jennifer Martinez, Sarah's best friend, still has nightmares about that text message. If you don't hear from me in 30 minutes, call police. She became a vocal advocate for meeting safety protocols, speaking at colleges and community centers about the dangers of in-person meetings with online sellers. Machi, Sarah's rescue cat, was adopted by Jennifer. He still sometimes sits by the front door, waiting. Sarah Chun is buried at Skyline Memorial Gardens in Portland. Her headstone reads, "Beloved daughter, friend, and fighter for justice." 1995 to 2023, she refused to be a silent victim. Every year on March 16th, dozens of people she never met visit her grave. Scam victims, advocates, people who heard her story and were inspired by her courage. Because Sarah Chun didn't just lose her life. She changed countless others. As for Marcus Webb's other victims, the 127 people he scammed before Sarah, most never got their money back. Federal prosecutors seized Marcus's cryptocurrency accounts, $287,000 in total, and distributed it to victims. But with 127 claims, most people received only a fraction of what they'd lost. Some victims told investigators they felt guilty. If they'd reported Marcus sooner, if they'd pushed harder for investigation, maybe Sarah would still be alive. But that guilt belongs to only one person, Marcus Webb. Many of Marcus's victims formed a support network. They advocated for stronger regulations on online marketplaces, for identity verification requirements, for federal task forces dedicated to online fraud. Because of Sarah's case, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and OfferUp all implemented new safety features: in-app messaging warnings, verified seller badges, and automatic alerts when transactions seem suspicious. It wasn't enough. It's never enough. But it was something, so what can we learn from Sarah Chen's story? First, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Sarah noticed red flags, but ignored them because she was under pressure. Don't make that mistake. Second, never meet strangers alone. Always choose public places. Police station parking lots are best. Bring a friend. Tell multiple people where you're going. Third, verify identities. Use reverse image searches. Check social media history. Look for inconsistencies. If someone has only recent posts or a brand new profile, be suspicious. Fourth, use secure payment platforms with buyer protection. Never use unknown websites. Never wire money. Never send gift cards. Fifth, if something goes wrong, report immediately. File police reports. Warn others. Share the scammer's information in scam victim communities. But here's the hardest truth. Sarah Chen did many things right. She researched. She investigated. She documented everything. She told a friend where she was going. And she was still murdered. Because sometimes the person on the other end of that screen isn't just a scammer. Sometimes they're a killer. And no amount of preparation can fully protect you from someone willing to take your life to protect their lies. That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to remind you. Your life is worth more than any amount of money. If you've been scammed, let it go. File a report. Move on. Don't confront them. Don't try to be a hero. Because Sarah Chen tried to be a hero, and it cost her everything. In 2024, Oregon State Representative Maria Gonzalez introduced Sarah's Law, legislation requiring online marketplaces to verify seller identities for transactions over $500 and to maintain permanent records of all communications. The bill passed unanimously. Similar legislation has been proposed in 6 other states. It won't bring Sarah back, but might save someone else. Before we end, I want you to think about something. What would you have done in Sarah's situation? If someone scammed you out of $850, would you have investigated? Would you have confronted them? Would you have agreed to meet them in person? Would you have recognized the red flags Marcus showed? And here's the really uncomfortable question. Have you ever bought something from Facebook Marketplace? Craigslist? OfferUp? How well did you verify that seller's identity? How many times have you met strangers from the internet with less caution than Sarah showed? This story isn't meant to make you paranoid, but it should make you more careful. Because Marcus Webb is in prison. But there are hundreds, maybe thousands of scammers just like him still operating right now, on the same platforms you use every day. And some of them might be willing to do what Marcus did. If this story affected you, if it made you think, if it taught you something, hit that like button. It helps this video reach more people who need to hear Sarah's story.